Hi and welcome to the So Many Things YouTube channel. I'm Tim, your host. Here you get to sew with the boys, quilt with the boys, embroider with the boys, and of course, mostly have some fun, and you might learn something along the way. Stay tuned! Hi and welcome to Sewing with the Boys. Today we're going to explore stitches on the JUKI DX7. We're not going to be real technical about it, we're just going to sew some stitches and enjoy the machine. Alright, let's get started. Alright, so I just want to play with some decorative stitches on the machine. First things, I want to get into the group that's going to allow me to sew the stitches continuously. So I'm just going to press my little 1, 2, 3 finger guide. This is going to give me 5 choices. I want to go to this group here, so I'm going to highlight that group and tell it OK. It's going to give me the first stitch pattern in that group, but I actually want to sew stitch pattern number 32. So I press in 32. I just wait a second, it'll select the pattern for me. 7 millimeters wide, 5.6 millimeters is my pattern length. That's an indicator for pattern length, no longer stitch length. Now I want to sew, or do I want to have it lock stitch for me? I'm going to have it lock stitch, so I'm going to come over here and I'm going to press my lock stitch button. Now it will lock stitch at the beginning, sew the pattern. When I want it to stop, I'm going to tap the lock stitch again, and it will then stop sewing and cut the thread for me. So first things first, put our foot down, press the button to make it sew the pattern for me. Press the lock stitch button, does the lock stitch, cuts the thread, lifts the foot off. Isn't that a beautiful stitch? One of many decorative stitches. Let's go on and play with some more. Let's find another stitch that we can play with on this machine, because there's plenty to play with. In this same group, let's go to stitch pattern 45. It's a little different than a regular blanket stitch in that it has a tiny little zigzag to the back end of it. So let's give it a whirl. Now that time I didn't use the lock stitch. I did use the lock stitch on the machine, but it's not programmed into my display, so now I have to manually cut the thread and take it out to see what it looks like. See, it's a little blanket stitch with a little zigzag behind it. Let's try another stitch. Let's stay in that same group just to keep it simple. So let's try 53. This is a feathering stitch. I happen to like this one. I like to use this one when testing a stitch pattern on a machine. If it does this stitch pattern balanced well, then I know the machine is actually set up pretty well to do most of my other decorative stitches. As you can see here, it kind of looks like a feather. Now you notice I don't have much hand pressure on the machine. I'm just letting the machine move the fabric for me. Lock stitch, cut the thread, lift the foot. I'm free and clear. Isn't that a beautiful feather stitch? Let's go back up to the top here. Let's find another stitch to play with. How about 78? It has little hearts. Now you notice there are 3 different sizes. This is one of the random stitches, so the machine is going to automatically select a different size heart every time it sews it. This is actually kind of a fun one to play with. You notice I'm just letting the machine do the work for me. It lifts it, it's done, and there's my series of little hearts. You see how each heart has a different size? That's because of the random selection by the computer. It grabs a different one every time it starts a new heart pattern. You can make them all the same by selecting it from a different option, but this is just a fun way to have something different. So that's in our little 1, 2, 3 in our third group, which has the blanket stitch indicator. Let's go to the next group. So we're going to come back to our 1, 2, 3. We're going to touch it again, or use the arrow to move over to grab the leaf and twig. I call this the leaf and twig. It's 2 leaves and a little twig in the middle, or a vine if you'd like, and touch OK. It's going to give me the first stitch pattern in that group. And that's fine to start with, so let's go ahead and sew that one. Let's not forget to turn on our lock stitch so that we can tell it to end at the end. If you've noticed, when I touch my lock stitch to tell it to reach the end, it continues sewing until it completes the pattern for me. So here's our beautiful little leaf pattern. And all I did was select it and tell the machine to sew. Let's start another row with some other patterns. Now let's play with one of those features on the machine that allows us to mirror image that pattern. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to press the mirror image key. You can see it's now flipped over in the display. And it's going to sew that same pattern except with the curves to the left. My curves are now going to be to the right. You see, this is the original position, and this is the reversed position. You know what? How about a little bonus? Let's turn off that mirror image, and let's line our needle back up to our previous row of stitching where we did have the mirror image on. We're going to lower our foot, make a little adjustment here so I can make sure that my needle is going to fall about where I need it to fall so that I'm going to track along this line, and hopefully now I can make it look like it's duplicated on both sides. Remember, it's the same pattern. Let's see how good I can make this look. Well, that's not too bad for beginner's luck. What do you think? Same pattern, but now I've made circles instead of just half circles from that same pattern. If I paid a little bit more attention here, that little line would have been a little closer together. Let's go on and try some of the other stitches on the machine. Let's jump into a different group here, because these are all nice, but I have the other ones to play with. So let's go into the last section, like this is our satin group here. It's going to give me the first ones, which are cross stitches, but I want to play with some of the satin element ones, or I want to play with some of the stitches that have a little bit more detail to them in that tighter space. So first one, let's try it with a satin. So let's go to 64. Once again, it's going to repeat until I tell it to stop. I want it to lock stitch and secure it at the end for me, just to make it simpler. See, there's my little satin teardrops. Maybe you can see it better this way. If I wanted those to be tighter, I can make an adjustment to the stitch length and make them tighter, closer together. They look a little sparse to me because I'm using a little thinner thread than I would normally use, but I like to use the red thread so that you can see it on the camera. Let's go try one of these other ones a little bit more decorative work-wise. So let's go to 73. Now you notice this does not have a stitch length. This is a pattern length indicator now, so I can adjust the length of the pattern, not the length of the stitch. Oops, we had a little malfunction there. Let's see what's going on. Well, my bobbin's still connected. What happened to my top? You know, these things do happen. Fortunately, it was right at the beginning, so I can easily take out this extra thread here, salvage my little piece of fabric, but I need to rethread my upper thread. So we're going to rethread our machine. Gosh, he makes that look so easy. Oh, I should show you a trick. Watch this one. I'm going to put my foot down. I'm going to hold both my threads. I'm going to use my needle threader. Now I've separated my tail so I don't have any salvage there. My starting thread is actually underneath my fabric, so I can just lower my foot and should be able to start sewing, and I won't have any loose tail on the top. Well, let's see what we can do to mirror image that one as well. This one's going to be a little trickier because I'm going to be really close to the edge of the fabric. So I'm going to start by lowering my foot and trying to get my alignment to match my needle. I'm going to slow my machine down a little bit and see how well I can get it to work. Well, I didn't do a very good job because I started a little early, so of course the whole pattern is off a little early. But you know what? Nobody's going to know, only you and me, because I just told you that's what happened. But if I wanted to fill something in the middle, I can actually go back and stitch another pattern in the middle to create a little bit more fill or a little bit more interest to this pattern. So let's go on down and try some other patterns. Let's try some of our words. Everybody needs to be happy every once in a while, so let's try happy. So there's my little happy word. We have other words built into the machine as well, so you can play with yours at your convenience. I hope you found this video helpful. Thanks for watching.